Good morning to everyone. In the previous class, I made an humble attempt to explain about cardiac cycle, in which we discussed about where do the contraction in the heart takes place, sino-auricular node. This process is involved in sino-auricular node, auriculoventricular node, and then bundle of His which flows in both the ventricle, and it involves in the diastole and systole of both the auricle and ventricle and all. So today let us see the function. How do this cardiac cycle functions take place? The ventricles and atria again undergo joint diastole. We discussed about joint diastole. In this position, all the chambers, four chambers, will be in normal state. Okay, so that is joint diastole and cardiac cycle is repeated. A cardiac cycle is completed in 0.8 seconds. 0.8 seconds. One heartbeat is equal to a cardiac cycle. So normal heartbeat is 70 to 75 times per minute. Average is 72 minutes. Okay, so one cardiac cycle, that means first almost all the chambers are in joint diastole in state, and then first contraction after receiving the blood by both the atrium, contraction takes place, that is systole take place, and then gradually the blood moves, 30% of blood moves towards the ventricle, and ventricular diastole take place there. Again the systole occurs. So due to this pressure, what happens? The blood will be flow out of the, what is that, heart, isn't it? Then gradually it attains its diastole, joint diastole state. So this is one cycle. So like this, okay, seven, that is in 1 minute, okay, or in 72 cardiac cycle or heartbeat will be take place within a minute, is the concept. Next, stroke volume and cardiac output. What is the stroke volume and cardiac output here is a volume of blood circle during a per minute, how much of the volume of blood circles per minute rate is called as what is that, uh, cardiac output or stroke volume. Okay, so 70 into 72 is the range. The rate is very high. And now let us discuss heart sound. How do the lub and tub sound will occur from the heart? Okay, so during each cardiac cycle, now we are going to see heart sounds. Okay, during each cardiac cycle, two sounds are produced. The first sound is lub, L-U-B, lub, is due to the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves. When do the tricuspid and bicuspid valves closes? When the blood flows from the to atrium, immediately when the blood enter into the ventricular chamber, then both the tricuspid and bicuspid valves will be closed. During this time, the first sound occurs, that is lub. Okay, the second sound, dub, is due to the closure of semilunar valve. When do the semilunar valve, semilunar valves are present both the ventricular region, isn't it? Yes. So when the ventricular systole means contraction, the contraction occurs in the ventricle, both the ventricle, then it flows, the blood will be pumped through the the respectively through the pulmonary artery and aorta. So aorta from the left ventricle, and through the blood flows through the pulmonary artery from the right ventricle. So simultaneously this process takes place. Immediate after pushing the blood outside, what will happen? The semilunar valves of this region will be closed. So during this time, dub sound will occur, the second sound will occur. So both the sound after completion of this first and second sound is called as one cycle, one cardiac cycle. Okay, so lub sound is the first sound and dub sound is second sound. Lub sound occurs when the tricuspid, both tricuspid and bicuspid valves closes, and closure of tricuspid and bicuspid, and closure of semilunar valve causes dub, that is second sound. Okay, next, see, look at this. Electrocardiograph is an instrument. Usually we call it as ECG. For what this instrument is utilized? Listen, it is an instrument used to obtain electrocardiogram. Okay, obtain electrocardiogram. Electrocardiogram is the graphical representation of electrical activity of the heart during a cardiac cycle. It says about the electrical activity of the heart during a cardiac cycle. To get an ECG, a patient is connected to the machine with three electrical leads, one to each wrist and to left ankle. Okay, and to left ankle. Look at this picture. Okay, one to each wrist and left ankle. The monitor heart activity. For a detailed evaluation of heart function, multiple leads are attached to the chest region also. Okay, so ECG consists of three electrical leads. Okay, those are called as leads, one to each wrist and to left ankle. Then these three will monitor heart activity. For a detailed evaluation of heart function, multiple leads are attached to the chest region also. So then an electrocardiograph ECG consists of the following waves. Look at this. The wave is given here. Look at here. See, there are P, Q, R, S, T waves are there. How do this wave occur? First, let us discuss about P wave, very, very important one. Okay, P wave. The P wave represents the excitation of atria which causes atrial systole. Systole means contraction. Auricle or atria will be, contraction will be take place in the atrial region. Okay, so then the P wave occurs. It represents the excitation. First, at the beginning, it will be normal, in the normal state or diastole state. Which one? The atria. So when the excitation take place for the systole, so that is known as P wave. It is little normal. See, look at the picture. It is little normal. The P wave is normal. It is not a peak or it is not going little down. It is normal P wave. Q or S complex. This represents depolarization of ventricles. Depolarization of ventricle. In the sense, the systole take place in the ventricle is called as depolarization. Depolarization of auricle, in the sense, the systole take place in the auricle. Okay, so here the T wave, when the ventricular systole take place, what happens? The Q R, see, R wave is peak in nature now. So P, Q, R. P wave is depolarization of atria, and QRS waves are, these complexes are, it represents depolarization of ventricles. Example, ventricular systole. When the ventricular systole happens, these three waves will be occurring. So T wave represents the repolarization of ventricle. Repolarization in the sense what? Ventricular diastole. When the ventricular diastole comes, the T wave will be formed. The T wave will be formed. So you might have observed in that monitor, okay, in the ICU, it is kept in the hospital in the ICU. If you observe, we might have noticed this kind of waves is continuously moving. Okay, it monitors the function of the heart. The P wave, first P wave will be formed, and then Q will be moves little downwards, and then R is the peak, and again S will be little downwards, and then comes T. So the P wave, when do the P wave occur? When the atrial systole take place. When do this QRS waves will occur? When the ventricular systole occurs. When do this T wave occur? When the repolarization or else the diastole, when the diastole occur in the occur in the ventricle. So don't forget about it. It is one of the 5-mark question. Make a note of it. Okay. Now look at this. Deviation in ECG. Any deviation is take place in the electrocardiograph indicates the abnormality or disease. So ECG has great clinical significance. So sometimes what happens when the cardiac arrest or mild heart attack comes immediately, they used to suggest, the professionals used to suggest the patient to undergo the electrocardiograph. So during ECG, they will find out whether any abnormalities are seen in these waves. Okay, with the help of these waves only, they will find out whether it is a mild one or a harder one. If it is harder one, the P wave itself, it will show that drastic either peak or it will the wave will come down. So then immediately they will see the QRS complex also. So whether sometimes what happens, the peak of R complex, R wave will be little shows moderate height. So then they will find out the abnormalities and the heart diseases. So ECG has great clinical significance. Got my point? Next, look at this. Now we are going to discuss about double circulation in cardiac cycle. Double circulation. It is the circulation in which blood flows through the heart twice for completing its circuit. It includes pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. Make a note of it. Okay. So two circulation, double circulation. Okay. You have to mention pulmonary circulation. In the previous year, you might not be come across this kind of words, isn't it? So pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. Since these both kind of circulation involves, it is called as double circulation. Okay. So here, let us discuss about what does pulmonary circulation means. In pulmonary circulation, what happens? The circulation between the lungs and heart is called as pulmonary circulation. Is it not? See, look at this. Pulmonary vein and pulmonary arteries, already we discussed this story during the respiration. The pulmonary artery and pulmonary veins are attached with the alveoli, isn't it, in the lungs? Now, the pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood to the left atrium. The pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood to the right, from the ventricle to the lung, isn't it? Yes. So the vessels which are connected with the lung is known as one circulation, pulmonary circulation, which is called as pulmonary circulation. So circulation between lungs and heart. The deoxygenated blood from right ventricle to the pulmonary artery to lungs. The oxygenated blood to the oxygenated blood to pulmonary veins and to the left atrium. So oxygenated blood will be collected from the pulmonary vein, which is connected with the alveoli or lung, and then the oxygen will be received by these pulmonary veins, and finally it pours into the left atrium. So this is one cycle. Okay, so in one cycle itself, simultaneously what happens from the ventricular right ventricle, what happens, the deoxygenated blood carries carries the pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lung. Okay, so from here to lung, At the same time, what happens? The pulmonary vein carries the oxygenated blood to the heart. So this is one cycle. Okay, this is one cycle. Another cycle. Look at this. Let us consider it as a tissue. Okay, from the tissue, the deoxygenated blood carried by the veins. Okay, superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, these are veins. Okay, the veins carries, okay, the deoxygenated blood from the tissues into the right atrium. At the same time, the oxygenated blood from the left ventricle pushed out to all the parts of the tissue is known as, what is that? This is one of the circulation, second circulation. So pulmonary circulation and what is that? Systemic circulation. The systemic circulation says that the circulation between heart and various body parts, oxygenated blood from left ventricle to aorta and to the arteries and to the arterioles and then capillaries. It reaches the capillaries and finally enter into tissue. Then the deoxygenated blood, after utilizing the oxygen, what happens? The deoxygenated blood will be formed after respiration, is it not? So then the deoxygenated blood from the tissues and then enter into the venules, then veins, and then vena cava to the right atrium. This is one circle. So totally systemic circle as well as pulmonary circle. So two circles are take place, hence it is called as double circulation. See, both the pulmonary and the systemic circulations are given here. Look at this. And still some of you did not submit your diagram as well as the test which we conducted in the previous class. Look at this. Hepatic portal system. Hepatic portal system. It is a system which includes the hepatic portal vein that carries blood from intestine to the liver before it is delivered to the systemic circulation. Systemic circulation means what? Systemic circulation, say here, the deoxygenated blood from the tissue will be carried. Before that, the oxygenated blood will be carried from the heart through the, what is that? Arteries and then arterioles and then venules and finally enters into the tissue. After the completion of respiration, actually the deoxygenated blood must be carried to the heart. So between this period, what happens? The oxygenated blood goes to the small intestine and carries all the nutrients such as glucose. Glucose is produced from the carbohydrate, amino acids from the proteins, and then fatty acids from the fats. So this will be carried to the liver. So here also one system is there, circulation is there. Okay, before entering into the heart, before carrying deoxygenated to the heart, there is a system, there is a vascular system, working system is there. So during this time, it will carry all the nutrients from the small intestine to the, what is that? Liver is called as hepatic portal system. Don't forget. Next one. Coronary circulatory system. Coronary circulatory system. Look at this. See, this regulation of cardiac activity. Now, regulation of cardiac activity. How do this cardiac activity will be regulated? With the help of brain. Okay, myogenic heart. Medulla oblongata regulates the cardiac activity through ANS. What is the ANS? CNS means central nervous system. ANS, autonomous nervous system. Autonomous nervous system. The sympathetic nerves in the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nerve, parasympathetic and sympathetic. You might have heard about parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves, which is present in the brain. So later classes we are going to deal with this topic. Okay, so there is a nerve called sympathetic nerve, which is present, which is a constituent of ANS, autonomous nervous system. Increase the rate of heartbeat, the strength of ventricular contraction, and cardiac output. The parasympathetic nerves of ANS decrease the heartbeat and conduction of action. So sympathetic increases the heartbeat, and then ventricular contraction, cardiac output, everything will be done by this sympathetic nerve, which is present in the, what is that, autonomous nervous system. Parasympathetic nerves decreases all these heartbeat and conduction of action. It includes lymph, which one? Lymphatic system. Next, let us pass on to the next topic called lymphatic system. So, so far in circulatory system we discussed about heart, and then blood. Blood consists of so many constituents such as plasma, and plasma is made up of water and some proteins, and also immune system, and then some elements such as WBC, RBC, as well as blood platelets. Now it is time for us to discuss about lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is also one of the circulatory system. This lymphatic system includes lymph, lymph vessels, and lymph nodes. Look at the picture. Where do the lymph nodes are present? Lymphatic tissues are there, and lymphatic ducts are present. Okay, the starting point is thymus always. Clear? So here, as the blood passes through the capillaries, first it enters into the, from the heart, enters into the aorta, which is a bigger size. What is that? Artery, and then arteriolar region, and then venules, then capillaries, isn't it? So as the blood passes through the capillaries in tissues, some water and soluble substances are filtered out from the plasma. When the blood flows, when it comes to the capillaries, what happens? Some amount of water and some soluble substances are filtered out from the plasma to the intercellular spaces, not inside the cell, between the cell. It will be poured. Some plasma and filtered substances will be poured in between the cells, which is called as intercellular spaces, to form tissues. Okay, tissue fluid. The fluid which is present in between the cells are called as, or intercellular space is called as interstitial fluid. What is that? Interstitial fluid. It has the same mineral distribution as that in plasma. Some tissue fluid enters these fluids which are present in between the cells, called interstitial fluid. Some of this fluid enters into the lymphatic system, and the tissue fluid in them is called lymph. Got my point over? Lymphatic system consists of, it is also called as immune system. Some of the soluble substance and water which are filtered from the blood vessels, from the capillaries, are staying in the intercellular region, and later period it will mix up with the lymph, is called as lymphoid tissues, lymphoid system. It drains back to major veins. Later it drains back to veins, and then veins carries all these substances, and again when the blood comes into the capillaries, again the filtration happens. These water and soluble substances stay in the intercellular space, and again it will mingle with the lymphatic system. These lymphatic system are colorless fluid containing lymphocytes. Lymphocytes, they contain some of the cells. Cytes means cells. Lymphocytes. This is the structure of lymphatic system. Okay, so tissue fluid formed, tissue fluid observed. In between the cells, the tissue fluid will be seen. See, atrio consists of, the arterioles or arteries or capillaries will be in this, oxygenated blood will be flowing with high pressure, because it is very minute, no. So there the pressure of the blood will be high. During this time, the lymphatic, the blue color one, the lymphatic tissue will be formed in between the cells. See, the blue color one is flowing in between the cells. So these are called as interstitial fluids. Later period, these fluids will mix with the lymphatic tissue, okay, and then which is called as lymphatic, lymphocytes. These are called as lymphocytes. And what are the functions of this lymph is the concept. Lymph plays an important role. Later period in the 12th standard also you are going to study about lymph. So please make a note of it. Lymph is the middleman between blood and tissue. Okay. So the tissue fluid help to exchange nutrients, gases between the blood and cells. That is the function of this lymph. It carries plasma protein synthesized in liver to the blood. It carries plasma proteins synthesized in liver to the blood, because the plasma proteins are albumins and globulins are the plasma proteins, isn't it? So these two are produced in liver only. So later period, these proteins will be carried from the liver to blood, because blood is made up of plasma. Plasma contains these plasma proteins. Got it? Yes. So now what happens? Transports this lymph transports digested fats through lacteals in the intestinal villi. Okay, so fat soluble vitamins, hormones, etc. will be, transported through the lymph only, which are produced in the villi. Filtration of bacteria and foreign particles, because the lymph consists of some of the phagocytosis. Phago means eating, cyte means cell, cell eating. So they have the capacity to eat the cell, bacterial cell, and foreign particles comes inside. Then these lymphs only engulfs it. Engulf means ingesting. Okay, so lymph nodes produce WBC. Where do the WBC will be produced? Lymph nodes. Okay, so that is those lymph nodes consist of lymphocytes. Okay, and some of the antibodies. What is antibodies? The chemicals which are produced against the antigen. When the foreign body comes, these lymphocytes engulfs and it produces, what is that? Antibodies. Clear? Next, what are the disorders of this circulatory system? Some of the disorders we could see, disorders of circulatory system. Okay, look at this: hypertension, high blood pressure. The pressure of circulating blood on the walls of the blood vessel is called as blood pressure. Make a note of it. Okay, so what is blood pressure? It's a BP. Usually we used to call it as a BP, high BP, low BP and all. Okay, so pressure of circulating blood on the walls of the blood vessel is called as blood pressure. The normal blood pressure is 120/80 mmHg. Hg means mercury. Okay, it includes systolic pumping pressure, that is 120 mmHg, and diastolic resting pressure 80 mmHg. So there is the instrument is there to measure this blood pressure called a sphygmomanometer. Okay, so in these there will be a small scale, and center of this scale in which little amount of mercury will be poured. When it is pumped, the mercury goes to the peak of the scale, and when we reduce it such a way that we have the the cloth is attached with our hand. Okay, and the balloon like airbag is pumped, so that our the hand will be tightened, so that easily we can calculate the pressure of the blood vessels. Okay, so when it is released, what happens? When it attains 120, we could hear the systole sound, lub sound. Okay, and then when it is end at 80 mmHg, we will hear the sound, tub. So these two, the sound, the heart sound starts from you know 120, and it will ends up at 80 mmHg. So then it will be normal. Okay, when the blood pressure is higher than the normal BP, it is called as hypertension. The pressure of circulating blood on the walls of the blood vessel is called as blood pressure. So normal BP is 120. Okay, 120, and there will be two kinds of BP: hypertension and low blood pressure. So if an individual repeatedly has the BP of 140 to 90 or above, it shows hypertension. Look at the picture that if it cross above 120, then it is hypertension. Clear? And when the systolic pressure, that is, look at that, when the blood pressure is higher than the normal BP, it is called as hypertension. If an individual repeatedly has a BP of 140 or 90 or above, it shows hypertension. It leads to heart disease and affects vital organs of brain, kidney, etc. Okay, so due to the pressure, it affects kidney also. 5 foods to avoid during high blood pressure, also given here. See, look at this: excess of salt, sugar, meat, oil, alcohol must be avoided. But 10 natural foods which lowers the blood pressure is all of this. Okay, banana and cheese, all these pulses, fibrous vegetables, milk, okay, watermelon. So all of these will lower the blood pressure. Look at the picture. Look at the picture. So 5 foods to avoid during high blood pressure and 10 natural foods to lower blood pressure. So these are the life-oriented lessons you have to listen carefully. Clear? So the high blood pressure leads to, affects the vital organs such as brain, kidney, etc. And next one is coronary artery disease, CAD, or atherosclerosis. It is also called as atherosclerosis. What does it mean? Here, calcium, fat, cholesterol, and fibrous tissues are deposited in the coronary arteries. Look at the picture. Okay, the second one, the yellow color area, okay, which is known as plaque. So in which all the calcium, fat, cholesterol will be stored, deposited. It makes the lumen of arteries narrow, and thereby it affects the blood supply. So due to this, what happens? An acute chest pain due to oxygen deficiency to heart muscle. Since oxygen will not be properly carried to the heart muscle, acute chest pain will occur. So it occurs due to improper blood flow only. It is common among middle-aged and elderly people. Next one is called as angina. Angina is a acute pain. And next, heart failure. Heart failure is a little bit different. It is the inability of heart to pump blood enough to meet the needs of the body. So heart cannot pump. So congestion of the lung is the main symptom. Congestion of the lung. So the heart is present in between the cavity, isn't it? So due to the congestion, what happens? The heart will not pump. So this is the reason why this heart failure happens. Cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest is an electrical problem. Heart attack is a plumbing problem. Heart attack is nothing but due to deposition of certain fats, calcium and all. So cardiac arrest is an electrical problem. Since the sino-auricular node is not working properly during the systole or diastole, The starting problem of the heart is known as, cardiac arrest. And heart attack is a plumbing problem. Plumbing in the sense, the blockage in the arteries. And the heart attack, okay, it is the sudden damage of heart muscle due to the inadequate blood supply. Inadequate blood supply is called as heart attack. Okay, so to avoid it, okay, often we have to do exercise and morning, breathe, that is breathing practice, and taking, lower content, that is fat content must be lowered during taking the diet, and taking more vegetarian, and these are all the thing must be followed to avoid all these heart diseases. Okay, in the next class we will discuss about the beautiful lesson